He's a tough street-fighting lawyer with the highest ratings for honesty and integrity. He's here to answer your legal questions and get you the help you need. You're listening to the Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Joe Ingram has more than 20 years' experience fighting for his clients here in the state of Alabama. Joe's focus is criminal defense and family law. You don't have to face your legal issue alone. You've got Joe Ingram on your side. In case of sensitive legal matters, you can always reach out directly to Joe at joeingramlaw.com and arrange for a private consultation. And now, Alabama's defender of the defenseless, protector of the people, and all-around good guy, Joe Ingram.
All right. You're listening to the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram, your Alabama lawyer on WERC 105.5 FM in Birmingham, WBHP up in Huntsville, and WRTR in Tuscaloosa. Welcome to another edition of our show. We have great guests in the studio today. The first hour, we're going to have Everett Wess. He is a local lawyer, and he's running for the United States Senate on the Democratic side of the ticket. We're going to talk to him in just a moment. The second hour, we're going to have Corey Hill. Corey Hill, he's running for the agricultural commissioner. He's going to be in with us for the second hour. You do not want to miss that interview. It is a big position in the state of Alabama, and we're going to explain to you why it's important. Next week, folks, the Attorney General of the state of Alabama, Steve Marshall, will be in the house for an hour. He does lots of interviews all over the state, and primarily they're 30 minutes. Not many people get an hour with him, and I get to have a whole hour with him, and I may get to hold him hostage for an hour and 31 minutes for the entire show. You do not want to miss Steve Marshall. And the week after Steve Marshall, we have Barry Moore, who is his opponent for the United States Senate position. Back to back, you do not want to miss those two interviews. If you are listening to our show, you can always download, share, like our podcast, encourage others to listen as well. Our feature sponsor of the show is Spy for Rent. Spy for Rent are the names to know in the state of Alabama. Jeff Hammett, Corey Fuller are our investigators for my firm. They can do anything you need if you need an investigator in the state of Alabama, and they are the names to know if you need one. As always, you can reach out to our show. You go to the little red app on your phone. That's the iHeartRadio app. That's the Legal Lowdown. You click on that anytime you're listening to talk radio, whether it's Glenn Beck, Clay and Buck, Sean Hannity, whoever. You can go click on that little app. You can say, this is a message for the Legal Lowdown. The gurus will get that message to me, and we'll reach out to you, and we'll be glad to answer your question if you have one or a comment. Always, if you need legal representation in the state of Alabama, I represent people from Huntsville, Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile, and Tuscaloosa. You can call my office, 205-825-5297, or look us up, joeingramlaw.com, joeingramlaw.com. That's all you need to know for legal representation in the state of Alabama. All right, so Mr. Everett Wess is in the house. Everett, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
Great, Everett. Good to see you.
It is great to be here.
Everett, and introduce yourself to talk radio for 2/3 of the state of Alabama.
Well, I am Everett Wess, and I am a candidate for the United States Senate right here in Birmingham. This is the seat that Tommy Tuberville currently occupies. He is running for governor, so this is an open seat, and I am running as a Democrat on the Democratic ticket. The primaries are May 19th, 2026. I'm Everett Wess. I'm a local attorney here in Birmingham, Alabama. I have practiced for over 26 years. I have defended the rights of people, just as Joe and I, we work together in federal courts and in some state courts around the Northern District, Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, Montgomery, in Huntsville. So we've defended individuals and have defended the constitutional rights of individuals for 25 years or so. I have also worked as a municipal judge here in the Birmingham area, city of Midfield, for 8 years. I have been a prosecutor for the city of Midfield for about 5 years. I have been a public defender for the city of Irondale for about 5 years. I have also worked in Huntsville, Alabama. My undergraduate degree is computer science and mathematics. I've worked at Redstone Arsenal for contractors, TRW, which is Northrop Grumman, now on some U.S. Missile Command software development and maintenance, Patriot missile in particular. And I've also worked on some NASA contract, level 4 payload development for checkout units for NASA for about 5 years. I moved here to Birmingham, and I began working for Bell South, which is now AT&T. And while working in the IT field for Bell South, I went back to law school in the evening, completed that in the 3-year period, and then practicing law. So I've worked in the IT field for about 17 years. This is my second career where I worked in the area of law for this will be my 26th year. And now I want to work hard as your candidate for United States Senate from Alabama. And I'm asking the people of Alabama to send me to Washington to represent you pursuant to Article 1 of the United States Constitution as your United States Senator.
All right. For those that are listening at home, people don't know, Everett is a very diplomatic, very polished man. I love talking to him. All right, Everett, I'm going to hit you with a lot of questions fast, okay?
And I'll try to answer slow.
No, don't do that. All right. As United States Senator, where do you stand on the Second Amendment for gun rights for the people?
You know, I'm an advocate of the Constitution and all of the amendments of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, Amendment 1 through 10. I believe in Article 1, Article 2. I understand the duties. I understand that the Senate allocates funds for certain agencies, and we have oversight of those agencies. But particularly on the Second Amendment, you know, I'm a proponent of the Second Amendment, and I have guns myself. My grandfather hunted. My father, you know, they own guns. I have legacy firearms from my grandfather. So I have no problem with the Second Amendment. I do think that we need to use common sense, you know, with Second Amendment rights. I don't know if it's good to have, and I don't think that it's good to have military-style rifles in our communities and in our neighborhoods. I don't know if those who have been diagnosed with mental illness should have firearms. So I am a senator that wants to look, you know, at what's going on in our state, what's going on in our country, and I just want us to use common sense when it comes to the Second Amendment.
All right. So let me ask you about this, because this is a big issue that affects everybody in the United States. What are your general thoughts on monetary policy and the fact that we have a runaway budget in Washington, D.C., and no one seems to want to get on board and cut any department, not even 10% across the board? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, right now, Joe, I'm an attorney. I'm not in the Senate, but I would love to go to the Senate and look at where we're spending funds and make determinations as to whether or not those funds are good, you know, to be allocated for the American people? Are they being used appropriately? So I want to utilize the spending power and the oversight power that is given to the Senate through the Constitution of the United States, Article 1, and make sure that this funding is being used appropriately, to make sure that funding, that we're overseeing funding in the way that we need to. And we need to look at the budget just like I look at my household budget. I don't need to overspend and spend income when it's not coming in, and I need to make sure that I can pay my electricity bill, make sure I can pay my gas bill, make sure I can pay my water bill, make sure I can afford cable, make sure I can afford the cell phone, make sure that I have the income coming in to support the things that have to be paid for: food, clothing, my rent. So I'll take that approach, and we'll look at what funds are coming in and make sure that we can support the expenses or the funding that's being allocated.
Everett, not to put you on the spot, but I want to ask you a question. And if you don't know, say you don't know. Are there any particular budgets that you think that off the top of your head that need a cut? I mean, every department, and you know this because we used to have federal contracts. You never see a federal agency that comes in under budget when they start the fiscal year October 1. Is there anyone in particular to you that stands out to you that you have a pet peeve about, that you're like, this is just wasted money?
Well, the budget I would currently like to look at this juncture is in the news, and it's the budget that has to do with border patrol. Funding is currently being used to send border agents in some of our cities. We've had problems in Minnesota lately where two American citizens were shot by border patrol agents. We don't want the military, shooting or fighting or having conflict with American citizens. We want border control. We want border patrol agents to protect the border. But that's one thing we can look at that's in the news today is make sure that the funds are being allocated appropriately, and make sure that border patrol agents are being, used in the way that it's intended for them to be used. I personally don't like this idea of, if border patrol agents are doing what they're supposed to be doing, why do they have to wear masks? And as an African American, that brings back vestiges of things like the Ku Klux Klan. They cover their faces because they were doing something wrong, and a lot of individuals in that type of organization were law enforcement officers. But if you're law enforcement officers and you are conducting law enforcement duties in the way that you ought to be conducting law enforcement duties, I don't see any need for a law enforcement officer to have to wear face coverings.
Okay. We're talking with Everett Wess. He's running for the United States Senate on the Democratic side of the ticket. So, Everett, let me ask you something just to be clear. We're talking about the Department of Homeland Security. So what is your position on Border Patrol? Do you think people should come here legally, or do you think it was more acceptable under the last 4 years of Joe Biden, where we had probably 10 million people walk across the border and we had no clue who they were, and none of these people are self-deporting? Joe,
you're a lawyer and I'm a lawyer. The problem there is, and I looked on the internet, there's some information out there that says that we have 500 immigration judges in the United States, but there are like 3 to 5 million individuals who have cases pending in the immigration courts. a sensible solution to me would be for Congress to allocate more funding to allow to hire more judges and more staff in immigration courts so that we can process the backlog that we have. And once we process, we're able to process the backlog of those who are applying for citizenship or visas or whatever. Once we can get those cases resolved, we can make determinations as to whether or not, yes, you can become a U.S. citizen, or no, you need to go back to your country through the court systems, without pulling mothers and away from their children, fathers away from their children, spouses away from each other. I think there's just a better way to handle the immigration policies that we're involved in right now. Let's properly fund the courts and court staff so that we can get these 3 to 5 million people out of the system, and at that time we can make a determination as to whether or not they need to, and maybe in court on that day, once a resolution is had, make a determination as to whether or not they should be boarded on the plane and go back to their country, or whether or not they will get some legal status here in the United States, whatever that might be.
All right. So let me ask you about the next big issue that's out there. You familiar with the SAVE Act related to voter ID
Yes.
registration?
I am.
All right. So where do you stand on that from your position?
All right. Again, it comes to having common sense and using common sense, bringing common sense solutions to the Senate. One thing I thought about it, I have no problem with individuals showing their ID before they vote. All right? But what we can do as Congress, and one of my thoughts, is to provide a federal ID voter card. And Congress should also allocate funding so every eligible voter can receive a federal voter registration card. And you show that card and you're able to vote. I mean, the question is, some people don't have IDs. Well, we'll provide you an ID. We'll pay for that voter ID. And once you have that voter ID, your voting rights would never be able to be taken away from you. There is some Alabama legislation at this point that says if you do not vote for 2, 3, 4 years, then the state of Alabama will take you off of the voting rolls. But if you have that voter ID card, and I think pursuant to federal law, let's write some legislation where we will provide a voter ID card, and we'll pay a few dollars for you to receive that voter ID card. We have Star ID throughout the nation right now. We can do this. And once you receive that voter ID card as a U.S. citizen, and it's shown that you're a proven U.S. citizen, your voting rights, pursuant to the Constitution, will stand forever.
So let me ask you this. You go around, you talk to a lot of people on the campaign trail. Has anybody come up to you and said, Mr. Wess, I don't have ID, so I can't vote? Has that come up to you on the campaign?
That has not come up to me on the campaign.
Everybody's
All right.
got ID, Everett.
Well, I don't know if everybody has ID or not, but I know we as Congress, as senators and representative members, can ensure that everybody has an ID. Some people don't have, driver's license are the common form of ID.
Right.
And there are some people who do not have driver's license.
Right.
Okay.
If they lost their license or
if you lose your license, you go and get a replacement driver's license.
I'm talking about if they've lost their license because like a DUI or something like that, they may not have a driver's license. That's what I was talking about in those situations.
Okay. Well, they may not, but they're also driver's license for ID purposes only.
That's true.
Right.
Okay. All right. So we are in the middle of a war with Iran, and I don't care what terms they call it, excursion, all these synonyms to make it sound better with the media. Anytime you have troops in harm's way, we are at war. What are your thoughts on the use of military for the United States, and particularly like in this situation where there's been a lot of news in the last week about whether Israel was an imminent threat to the United States or if it was more of a Middle Eastern issue with Israel? What are your thoughts on this issue, Everett?
Well, again, Joe, I'm sure you read the Constitution. I've read the Constitution. I think that the act of war lies with Article 1, lies with the Senate and Congress. And in this particular instance, Congress was not consulted or asked or spoken with at all.
Well, they did talk with the Gang of Eight. Secretary of State Marco Rubio did go inform the Gang of Eight and let them know right after the first strikes happened. Now,
well, United States Congress doesn't say Gang of Eight. It says war powers are with the U.S. Congress.
Okay,
and I interpret that as the full Congress, and full Congress had not been notified that this war was about to take place, and I think the situation required to go through Congress first. I don't think this administration did that, and so I don't know if the war is justified or not. I don't know of any evidence that's been demonstrated as of this date that shows that there was an imminent threat to the United States. To me, it appears that this is something that Israel wanted to do, and Trump sort of got hoodwinked, and here we are in the middle of a war, and other countries are being pulled in at this juncture, so we're unsure as to where this thing is going to land. And so I think it would have been better if Congress, the body of Congress, had been consulted prior to this war starting.
Okay. We're talking with Everett Wess. He's running for United States Senate on the Democratic side of the ticket. Everett, we got about 2 minutes before we go to break. Let me ask you something really fast. When you're out on the campaign trails, tell me something that you get asked a lot about that you think is important to Alabamians that you want to change if you get elected to the Senate.
I think Alabamians want good, fair government. They want the things I know of that Alabamians want. Again, I've worked in Huntsville for a number of years, so we want to make sure that we provide funding to places such as Huntsville. We want to make sure that funding is appropriately allocated for health care. That's important to Alabama, especially in rural areas. There are some places in rural Alabama where it might take you an hour or so for an ambulance to come pick you up and take you to a hospital. We want to make sure that funding is appropriated for veterans. Veterans, my father was a veteran. Veterans fight for this country. They protect this country. We ought to make sure we take care of them. Those are some things that are important to Alabamians.
All right, we're talking with Everett Wess. He's running for United States Senate on the Democratic side. We'll be back after news and weather. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram. If you need confidential legal help off air, reach out to Joe at joeingramlaw.com. Stay tuned for more. Joe will be right back after this break for news and weather. You're listening to the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. Joe is a 20-year veteran of the Alabama courts specializing in criminal defense and family law. If you need a private legal consultation, email Joe at joeingramlaw.com. And now, welcome back to the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram.
All right, we're back for the second segment of Hour 1, Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram, WERC 105.5. WBHP up in Huntsville and WRTR in Tuscaloosa. We're talking with Everett Wess, who is an attorney here in Birmingham. I've known him for a long time professionally. He's a very wonderful man, and he's running for United States Senate on the Democratic side of the ticket. And right before we went to break, Everett said something, and so that brings me to my next question. Everett, where do you stand on national health care? Should it be paid for by the government for everybody, or is the system we have in place good enough in your vision?
As a senator, I think we would need to go back and look at what's going on in our country and try to do what's good for our country. And as the potential United States senator that will be representing Alabama, we need to do what's good for Alabama. Some things I want to look at is healthcare and how healthcare is conducted in some of our rural areas. It takes an ambulance an hour to go pick someone up and take them to the hospital. And we need to look and see if there can be federal funding that allows us to have health care for some of the poorest areas in Alabama. Some individuals are more than an hour within this state, away from a hospital and away from some facility that could provide medical care. Also, I think health care is paramount for our veterans, whether it's physical health care or mental health care. We need to make sure that the veterans' health care providers are funded. We need to make sure that we have doctors, nurses, make sure that we have social workers. Our veterans took care of us, and they take care of us by protecting this country, and we need to make sure that we take care of them. So, in my opinion, Congress certainly needs to look and fund health care for our veterans and health care for individuals who are in some of our rural areas in Alabama. We have plenty of hospitals and doctors in places such as Birmingham and Montgomery and Huntsville and Mobile, and maybe we can look at combining funds for veterans and rural Alabamians and making sure that folks have the ability to visit medical providers and get their medical needs taken care of in this state.
All right, let me ask you something before we get to some state issues. I've talked to a lot of guests over the last couple of months running for office. You talked about your background, working up at the Redstone Arsenal, your undergraduate degree, things like that. Have you heard a lot of conversation talking about these data centers?
I've heard a little bit about the data centers, and the questions are, do we want these in our area because it's draining on power grids. Is it going to raise the power rates for everyday citizens coming in? Then there's noise pollution potentially. How does that affect our neighborhoods? There's environmental issues sometimes. How loud are these things? Do they damage our ecosystems in any way? Water, vegetation,
and they don't really produce any jobs.
Animals. and do they produce enough jobs to where, it's really a viable uh, uh, thing for Alabamians. So we need to look at that and make sure that Alabama is taken care of. I know down in South Alabama, that they're concerned about the wetlands and solar panels and data centers coming in down there. And that affects uh, can affect oceans, and again the wetlands and animals that live in South Alabama. So we just need to look at that and make sure that we're not allowing data centers, solar panels, things of that sort, to come into this state and negatively affect the citizens of Alabama.
And I think this is going to be an issue for the next probably 10 to 20, 30 years, these data centers debate. Mm-hmm. And it's just come about in the last year or two with AI and all the new technology, right?
Mm-hmm. That is right. And it's big corporations versus, the little everyday Joe citizen. Yeah. So we need to make sure that our citizens are taken care of. And it's not federal, but statewide, we just have questions as to whether or not we're going to get rid of electing our PSC board, Alabama Power, or do we want this to become an appointed system? People are having trouble with paying their electric bills and things like that. And I think we've heard some rumors where Alabama Power lobbyists have been caught on tape, and which seems to indicate that Alabama Power wants to, profit and make money off of the Alabama citizens more so than doing what's good for the everyday Alabamian. But these are some things we need to look at and make sure we protect the Alabama citizens.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your platform. What are some things that are important to you that you want to do or help change if you were elected to the United States Senate?
All right. Some things that I'm interested in my platform is safe communities. And the way that we develop safe communities in Alabama first is have good jobs in Alabama, have good jobs for nurses and doctors and social workers who can work at the Veterans Administration, to have good jobs for people who work for the U.S. Army as civil servants or as contractors in Huntsville, Alabama. Some work for NASA. Some work for NASA contractors in Huntsville, Alabama. So we want safe jobs. We want to protect those jobs. We want people to feel comfortable that they'll have a job and comfortable in their jobs. We had these Doge cuts. And we had people in Huntsville who had to take early retirement, some people who had government jobs and had not been employed for more than 90 days were laid off. This affected Alabama citizens. This affected people who had mortgages, people who had rent, people who had children in school, children in college. They had to pay their electricity bills. They had to pay their car payment. They had to buy gas. And there was uncertainty because of these indiscriminate cuts by Doge affecting families in Huntsville, Alabama, people throughout the state of Alabama who had jobs like with the VA and other government jobs. But we need to make sure that we look at the budget, look at spending, and make sure we take care of Alabamians and make sure we just don't go in like a bull in the china shop, hurting the families of Alabama. Another thing that will allow us to have safe communities in the state of Alabama is good public education. I want us to have good public education, whether it's University of Alabama, Auburn, Alabama A&M, Alabama State, Tuskegee University. Again, during the period early on when we had these Doge cuts. Funding was being cut from UAB, and they're doing very important research. Funding was being cut from Auburn and Alabama A&M, our land grant institutions, and they're doing very important research when it comes to farming and agriculture and that type of thing. We don't want the government coming in like a bull in a china shop again, cutting, affecting public education in a way where these schools can't function in the way that they need to function, in a way that, and cutting important research that they're in the middle of. So those are some things that are a part of my platform that I want to look into as your United States Senator. And, we've already talked about trying to provide good, affordable health care throughout the state of Alabama, whether it's in rural areas or whether or not it's for the veterans. And then again, we want to protect the rights of Alabamians. We want to make sure that free speech is allowed. People have the right to peaceful protest. People have the right. A lot of Alabamians have firearms, but we need to make sure that they have firearms that are reasonable. I don't need a military-style rifle to go kill a deer. Probably can't eat it if I kill it with a military-style rifle. So we need to protect our cities and protect our rights and make sure that everything makes sense in our U.S. Congress and U.S. Senate positions.
Let me ask you, you were talking about education. Do you think the education system we have is good or bad right now in the state of Alabama? Because I think public schools right now in the state of Alabama, depending on where you live, and in the Birmingham area, if you live over the mountain, you have better school systems than you do in other parts of the city, right?
That is correct.
You agree with me, correct? So, Everett, you've been around longer than me. How do we improve that? Because, I don't know what the answer is to that, and I want everybody to have the same opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Well, Joe, where'd you attend undergraduate school? Where'd you go to school, undergraduate?
I went to Sanford.
You went to Sanford University,
yeah.
a private institution.
Yep.
And I went to Alabama A&M.
Yeah, which is a fine school.
Which is a fine school, which is a public institution.
Mm-hmm.
And we both ended up at Birmingham School of Law, and we both finished in 3 years, and we both passed the bar the first time, right?
Yeah.
So, the key is having good public education. I think Alabama A&M, Auburn, Alabama State, University of Alabama, these are some public institutions. I think they can provide good public, and we have many lawyers that have come through the University of Alabama, these public institutions. So public institutions of higher learning, we need to make sure we're putting out good quality teachers and lawyers and doctors. And, I think if we put out good teachers and good teachers are coming to Birmingham or Vestavia or Mobile or Montgomery or Jackson, Alabama, we can have good teachers who are teaching, students and making sure students are prepared and know the things that they ought to know when they get ready to move into the next phase of life, whether it's higher education or whether it's a trade or whatever. Another component of that is, has to do with what's going on in individual homes. How much impact does the government have in that? I think the federal government, we can make sure that kids are able to have a good meal before the school day starts. We can make sure that they have adequate resources, materials, books for school. We can make sure that they have adequate buildings. We can make sure that they have, clean water. We can make sure that they have the utilities that they need, electricity or gas. But a component of that is starts in the home, and making sure that we have families who are teaching their kids and putting their kids through kindergarten and putting them in a position so that when they come to the school, they're able to take in the lessons that are to be learned in our good public institutions.
Yeah. Do you? And I've heard a lot this last year. I think a lot of schools have decided that they're making kids put their cell phones up now, put them in their lockers, can't have them in the classroom, so that they're paying attention, which I think is really good. I think having cell phones in the classroom is probably a distraction for the students.
I think you're probably right.
And I think we've created a couple of generations of kids with social media and everything that most people don't have the attention span of more than about 30 seconds. I mean, they don't have the ability when we came up where you had to sit in a class and it was either rote memory or memorization skills, things of that nature. You have to show them a screen, you have to play a video, you have to read the words to them to keep them interested in whatever the subject matter is that they're in the class for.
Right. I don't know if you can legislate, a lot of this. I have granddaughters, and when they come visit me, I say don't bring those tablets. They'll stay on those tablets, and I think a lot of parents use cell phones and tablets to keep children occupied, so they don't have to deal with them.
Yeah.
But when I have my granddaughters, I try to find constructive things for them to do. We go outside and go hiking and go to the park and we'll go to the zoo or go to the aquarium or and that's just part of parenting or grandparenting, and they have a good time. And at the end of the day, they're tired and they've not sat and played on the tablet for 12 hours in the day. We and their mother make sure they read. They check out a certain number of books on a weekly basis and turn those back in and get new books. So that's parenting, and I can't control, and you can't control what other individuals do within their households, but we can use the bully pulpit of being a senator or being a congressman, and encourage families to spend time with your children and do things with your children and teach them how to do some of the old things we used to do growing up. How do you play hopscotch? And they enjoy that.
Yeah. Let me ask you. You've been out on the campaign trail. Are you doing this 5 days a week, 7 days a week? What's your schedule like?
I'm working 5 days a week. I try to go into the office at 4 a.m. in the morning and get as much of my legal work done. But it's a 5 day, 7 day a week job, 7 days a week. So usually the weekends I'm out of town, going throughout the state. And last night I was in Montgomery. Monday night I was in Lee County, Opelika, Auburn, Alabama. So may end up going to Birmingham, to Montgomery and Huntsville this weekend. I've just been all over the state. Last weekend I was in Fairhope, Alabama. Weekend before that, Mobile. Week before that, Lawrence County, Madison County. So I'm just traveling all over the state. It is a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
So I am Attorney Everett Wess, working to be your next United States Senator.
Everett, we're all working 20 hours a day. I can assure you. I'm just kidding. Let me ask you something. So I forgot how I was going to phrase this. You're out. You see a lot of people. Do you have any opposition on the Democratic side of the ticket?
There are 3 individuals running on the Democratic side, and I think there are 6 on the Republican side. So my approach right now is to deal what's in front of me. I need to become the nominee and get more votes than the other 3 individuals.
What's the data? You seen any data where you are right now in the horse race?
I've not seen any data. Another thing, I did look at who was running on the Democratic side, and I looked at it and I thought, well, I'm a lawyer and I've gone through the Constitution a few times, and I've defended constitutional rights a few times. And, I thought I had something to offer. And 3 days before qualifying ended, I threw my name in the hat. So I'm late coming onto the scene and running for U.S. Senate. But I think we made a lot of progress. We've gone to a lot of places. We met a lot of people. And I think we're doing great as far as getting our message out to the citizens of Alabama.
What do you hear? We only got about 4 minutes left, Everett. Really fast.
Yes, sir.
What are 2 or 3 big things you hear from people that is important that you need to get out that people want, that they bring up to you?
Well, the important things that I hear about is health care, just the problems we have in getting medical care in rural Alabama. So I hear that a lot. I hear from people who work in the Huntsville area that just, we want to know that we're going to have a job tomorrow. We want to know that we're going to have a contract tomorrow. This is affecting my rent, my mortgage, my kid is in college. We need stability in this government. We want to know what's happening from one day to the next. With the current administration, it's kind of hard to tell where we're going to be from one day to the next. Who would have known that we would be in the middle of a war right now, after there were promises made that this administration would never go to war? And now we're threatening to take over Cuba. We've gone into Venezuela. Is this what the American people want? Is this what the American people need? How does this benefit Americans? How does this benefit Alabamians? And, I want to get in Congress and get us back to a point where we can hold the administration accountable and make sure we're doing things that are good for people of this country and people who live in Alabama.
All right, really fast. Give me this answer in about a minute and a half. You're going to be running as a Democrat if you win the primary. The Democrats have only won 2 statewide races in about the last 18 years. So you know what you're up against. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I hope that
you're fighting the 900-pound gorilla.
Well, I hope that people will look at me and look at what I've done. Again, I worked in private industry, worked in IT. I worked as a lawyer. I defended the constitutional rights of individuals. And I hope that people will look at me as a person. I hope that people will look at my platform, look at the things that I'm willing to bring to the table in order to try to make sure that life is better for all Alabamians. That's what I plan to do. I plan to represent all Alabamians when sent to the U.S. Senate. So look at me and look at my platform and what I've done. I'm on the board for an organization called Child Haven out of Coleman, Alabama, which takes care of young girls who have disrupted family lives for no reason of their own. I'm on the board for an organization called Legacy Works, and they look out for inner city young men, and we teach them trades, try to make sure they get through school, they're getting their lesson in school. And this is private these are organizations that are trying to help, people who might have trouble. And a lot of these boys in Legacy Works, they have gone on to take on trades such as HVAC, brick masonry, carpentry, and then some of these little young boys out of Legacy Works, out of the inner city, some have gone to college, public institutions, and they're in their second and third year in college. So look at what I've done, and I will continue to try to do good things for the people of Alabama.
All right, we were talking with Everett Wess. He's running for the Democratic primary for United States Senator. Good conversation. At the top of the hour, we'll be back with Corey Hill. He's running for Agricultural Commissioner for the state of Alabama. Folks, you don't want to miss that conversation. Everett, thank you for coming in today, okay?
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, we'll be back top of the hour after news and weather.
You're listening to the Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram. If you need confidential legal help off air, reach out to Joe at joeingramlaw.com. Stay tuned for more. Joe will be right back after this break for news and weather. He's a tough street-fighting lawyer with the highest ratings for honesty and integrity. He's here to answer your legal questions and get you the help you need. You're listening to the Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Joe Ingram has more than 20 years' experience fighting for his clients here in the state of Alabama. Joe's focus is criminal defense and family law. You don't have to face your legal issue alone. You've got Joe Ingram on your side. In case of sensitive legal matters, you can always reach out directly to Joe at joeingramlaw.com and arrange for a private consultation. And now, Alabama's defender of the defenseless, protector of the people, and all-around good guy, Joe Ingram.
All right. We're back for the second hour of the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram, your Alabama lawyer here in Birmingham, WERC 105.5. WBHP up in Huntsville and WRTR in Tuscaloosa. As we teased up the first hour, we told you today we're going to have a guest in studio. His name is Corey Hill, and he is running for the Agricultural Commissioner and Industries in Alabama. And Corey is here. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good today, Mr. Joe. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you to come in from. You had to make a little trek down to come in to do this. And so introduce yourself to Talk Radio of North Alabama.
All right. My name is Corey Hill. I live in Marshall County, a little small town called Douglas. I've been the mayor of Douglas since 2012. Born and raised there. We farm and have a business there. We operate a 5-house breeder pullet operation. We have about 120 mama cows. And our family operates the local grocery store there in town. Have a lot of things going on. Drove a school bus for a while. Farm, mayor. Married to my high school sweetheart for 36 years. Have 3 grown children and 8 grandchildren. We're busy.
And you're doing this.
And doing this, yeah. They say if you want something done, give it to the busiest man in the room, and it'll happen. So I guess that's true in a lot of cases.
Okay. All right. So a lot to unpack here. I want to go back a little bit. My grandparents had a grocery store when I was young and a barbecue pit. And the little town that I'm from, it was one of the first grocery stores in that area. My grandfather grew up in the Great Depression. So I want to go back and talk about the grocery store business a little bit. How big is your grocery store?
11,000 square feet.
That's a pretty good size.
It's decent size.
Yeah. And, one thing my grandparents always told me back in that era was they did a lot of work on, they would carry people on their books, meaning back in those days, they couldn't pay for their groceries every week. My grandfather hated to see people go hungry, so he would say he'd let them sign like credit in the store. Have you ever done anything like that?
We have. Growing up, that was very common. My mom and dad did that to a lot of folks. And then recently, in this day and time, we still do that for a few people. There's a few folks that on fixed incomes, 2 or 3 in particular that we do that with. It's been customers for many, many years, and they get their check the first of the month, and here they come to pay. And there's a time when you might get burnt on that at the end of their life, or something where they lose their income or something. But we're here to help people, and if we're in a position to do that, then that's what we're here to do. And as long as people ask me in good faith and I give in good faith, I'm willing to help anybody with their groceries. We do have some credit, but we have some charity also sometimes.
Yeah. My grandfather was a butcher in the back of the grocery store, and my grandmother ran the register. She ran the books. And my grandfather was, he was the face of the grocery store. My grandmother was the hammer, me. And when my grandfather died and they closed the grocery store, she was a little mad at the end because she said, we carried these people on our books for years and they never paid us. But they did it with the best intentions.
Yeah.
Most people don't know this about grocery store business. There's not a lot of markup, and there's not a lot of margin for profit in a grocery store business.
People think there is, I guess. It's kind of a volume business, and I think in business now, everything has become a volume business because its margins have shrunk so much over the years for everything, every commodity. But yeah, it's a very tight business. The middle of the store, the dry goods we call it, is very tight. You make a little money on the produce and meat, but you have a lot of waste over there too that you have to account for. So it's like peach and pennies. You gotta take the pennies and add them up to get where you need to be.
Yeah. All right. So, Corey, tell us about what this position is. Most people in the state, I know because they're not informed. Tell us what this position is about. This is really important.
Well, there's a lot, actually. There's 18 departments in the ag department. It's pretty big. There's over 300 employees. It's one of the top 3 agencies in the state as far as size. You got the DOT, ALEA, and the ag department. It's basically a consumer protection agency. The ag department, probably the most common thing people are familiar with is the gas pumps. You see the sticker on the gas pumps where they regulate if you buy a gallon of gas, then you should pay for a gallon. If you pay for 93 octane, you don't want to get 87. They check the quality of the gas. Every scale, anything that's sold for commerce in Alabama is this weighed or measured is regulated by the ag department. If you go to FedEx to mail a package and they weigh that package, that scale is regulated by the ag commissioner. All the scales in the grocery stores, farmers markets, the log trucks going down the road, those scales they drive across to weigh those logs to pay that producer, regulated by the ag department. Chicken trucks where they take those chickens across the scales to pay the producer. And then they have a lab in Montgomery. That's a few labs around the state, but the main lab in Montgomery, they go to the grocery store and they'll buy groceries and they take it back to the lab. And if you buy a box of Cheerios for 12 ounces, they'll weigh that and make sure there's 12 ounces in there. And they'll analyze that Cheerio, make sure the ingredients on the box match what's in the Cheerio. And sometimes that's how you catch a lot of these food recalls, voluntary food recalls, is across the nation this is happening. So they'll find things in products like that. They'll come in our grocery store and they'll check our hamburger meat and make sure that I'm not selling 93 lean or 73 lean. They'll analyze that meat and make sure it's actually what's on the label, the quality of it. And of course, they check the poundage and make sure that the scales are right there to make sure you're getting what you pay for. Baby food's a big thing. Dates, they really watch that close. They say all the time, a baby can't read the expiration date, so they want to make sure that's good. But, I don't think it's funny. People say, well, the baby can't open the bottle either, but, an adult has to do that. But we get in a hurry sometimes and don't look at dates. But baby food's a big thing. There's a lot of, the penalty for having out-of-date products in your business, the penalty is greater for baby food. They put a lot of emphasis on that. If there's a crisis in the state, if there's a blizzard of 93 or a April 11th situation, massive power outages for days, the ag department is dispatched out in the countryside to go in these businesses and make sure that those store owners are not selling you items that should be refrigerated that's not refrigerated. make sure it's safe. We had the April 11th tornado for us. We was out. It ripped half of our roof off of our building, and we were without power 4 days at our store. And we threw everything away in the freezer. I mean, every cooler, freezer, at all. After about a few hours, we threw it away. And of course, insurance takes care of that. It's a burden to do that, but some people might not do that. So the ag commissioner is responsible for that part of food safety.
Yeah,
it's pretty important. Another thing that the ag department does is they've taken this on is the Sweet Grown Alabama program, who I'd like to talk about at some point. But the Gulf shrimp is a big thing. You're supposed to label your shrimp, seafood. There's a law in Alabama that it's got to be on the restaurant menu or hanging in the restaurant where it comes from. And last summer they had a big event on the Gulf Coast in Alabama and advertising Gulf shrimp. And I think it was a lab, analyzed 35-ish restaurants, booths, and like 6 or 7 of them was actually serving Gulf shrimp. The rest of it was foreign. And of course they got in trouble. But to me, that's fraud. If you tell me I'm serving you Gulf shrimp and I'm not, it's from Vietnam, that's a fraud situation. And the consumer has a right to buy foreign shrimp if they choose to, but we can't lie to them and tell them that it's fresh Gulf. And there's no reason in Alabama that we can't serve fresh Gulf shrimp all over the state because it's right here in our back door. And it's frustrating to me that you can buy foreign shrimp or catfish cheaper than we can grow in Alabama. And we've got to find a way, and we will find a way to work with our local Alabama producers to where that's more readily available. Because it's sad to me that Alabama is the number 2 catfish state in the country, but we have so many restaurants choosing to put catfish on their menu that's not from this country or even this state. And a lot of that, I think, goes back to the supplier that they buy from, because sometimes restaurants don't have a choice but 1 or maybe 2 suppliers. They sign contracts. So I want to work with those wholesale suppliers to get those guys involved, to where we're working and making an effort to buy local, at least U.S. products, and particularly Alabama products.
Let me ask you, Corey. You were talking about the testing the shrimp in the lab. How would the lab know that it's not Gulf shrimp versus from a foreign country? Do you know?
I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I know I'm not a scientist, but I do know that they're in Vietnam, for instance, the seafood is grown in sewage lagoons.
Right.
So I imagine there's some kind of something in that would show up in the protein that wouldn't be in a Gulf product.
I get
you. My guess.
I get you. You're talking about Gulf shrimp. Let me ask you about this, because I read stories frequently throughout the year about oysters, oyster harvesting.
Right.
Would oysters fall under the Agricultural Commission as well for testing purposes?
It does for testing purposes. We're having some reef issues in the Gulf now. Not enough of those. They've been destroyed. And Department of Conservation has that now. Mm-hmm. They're responsible for the reefs. And I would definitely plan to work with those guys to establish some reefs, because if our reefs are gone, we can't grow oysters. If we can't grow oysters, we can't have Alabama oysters. Those Murder Creek oysters, I don't know if you've had them. They're some of the best in the world right here in South Alabama.
Yeah. All right, we're talking with Corey Fuller. He's running for the Department of Agricultural Commissioner and Industries in the state of Alabama on the Republican ticket. Corey, let's talk a bit about it a minute. You mentioned every time you stop to get gas, you see the little stickers on the pumps. And that's the way most people, if you pay attention when you're buying gas, you know who the commissioner is. What do you feel has led you to the point that you're qualified for this position?
Well, we farm full time, and we also have a grocery store. We produce the food, we process food, we sell the food, and I'm pretty good at consuming the food, actually. So we cover all gamuts of that. Now, me being in agriculture, I serve on the state poultry committee, and I'm around a lot of farmers. I don't row crop. It takes a lot of faith to be a row crop farmer. And I'm a faith guy, but I don't know if I've got that much faith to be a row crop. Put a seed in the ground and have the faith that it's going to grow and you're going to get your money back. Of course, farmers don't always do this thing for the money. It's the love of what they do, raising their kids on the farm and those things. But in talking the last few years with a lot of my farmer friends, their farmers are struggling in this country and in this state. And I think it's a good opportunity for a farmer. I don't remember the last time we've had a full-time farmer that was elected to the ag commissioner role. Now, all of them have been ag-related industries or a farming background particularly. But for a full-time farmer to serve in this position would be pretty important because we know the struggles about, I don't know who made the rule back in the day that a farmer has to produce a product and doesn't get to set their price. But that's just the way it is in agriculture. We're told everything we sell, how much we're going to get paid for it, no matter what it costs to produce it.
Is that from the federal side or from the state side?
Well, it's just the way the market is. It's not a government regulation. It's just the market. I mean, if you grow those row crop guys, whenever you grow your beans and have them picked and ready to go, you've got to go to a buyer, and there's not many of them out there. You got the poultry folks in Alabama that buy a lot of beans and corn. And you've got Cargill can take those. You can take those to Gunnersville or the port and load them up, and they'll buy them, and they take them to other places in the country. Our poultry that we grow, we don't set our price. We grow it, and then Tyson, Wayne, those integrators tell us what they're going to pay us for it. And that's market-driven to some degree. But these guys struggle, and what we've got to do is find a way to make farmers more profitable. Now, there's two things I think important roles from the ag commissioner standpoint is food safety. It's got to be the number one thing every day because we don't in this country think about food safety. We just eat food. We don't. I mean, it's safe. It always is safe. Everybody that come before us has done a great job maintaining a safe food supply. So we'll continue to work on that. But number two is we've got to find a way in the ag department to focus on agriculture and find a way to make the farmer more profitable so he can be sustainable. Because we've got to continue to grow food in this country because if we ever get to the point where we don't, we're a dying country. And, it's cliche. People say food security is national security, but that's 100% accurate. That is the case. And that's very important. So I think my history of producing food and selling food in the grocery store, knowing about food safety there, how to handle the food, and what to look for when things are not right. And then my background producing the food, growing up on a farm, my son's back from college, fourth generation on our farm. My granddaddy grew sweet potatoes on the farm that my mom and dad's house is on right now. And then we transitioned when he passed away to sugar cane. And Lord, I don't know why in the world we grew sugar cane. You're talking about stripping cane, buddy. I did it. And I know as an adult now that ain't something I want to do anymore. But in Sand Mountain where we was raised, that was a real popular thing to do back in the days, making sugar cane and having syrup. It was a fun way to grow up, but I don't want to do that for a living. But, we've been there for generations growing the food, and we see issues and problems that the farmer faces. And we're at a point in our country where it's a topic across our nation is food security, and we've got to find a way to make farmers profitable, as I said, and who better to do that than a farmer?
Yeah. So let me ask you something. What crops do you grow and sell personally?
We only have poultry and cattle.
Poultry and cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you do this, you don't know what you're going to get for your product on the market? I mean...
No, you don't. You can follow apps on cattle sales. There's nearly 20 in Alabama, and we have an app that tells what every sale does. You can look the day after the sale's over, and it'll say what a 400-pound or 500-pound calf brought that day. And it's just whoever's there bidding on those. It's an auction, so whoever's there's bidding on those cattle set the price. And if one guy shows up or 30 shows up, it depends on who's there bidding. And typically calves in Alabama that's weaned go out west. That's where they're going to be fed to get ready for harvesting. But Joplin, Missouri, and those places. But we don't set the price. Now, if you want to buy a calf and you want to process it and put it in your freezer. You can come to me and say, hey, Corey, I want to buy your next 600, 800 pound steer. How much you take for it? And I say, I'll take $1,500 or $2,000. We can do that.
And that's not controlled. You get to control that.
Yes.
That
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's no rule or law against that or whatever. And, a lot of the sheep and goat guys do sell off the farm to individual people. They come and buy those sheep and goat for consumption. And they can set their price $200 or $300, I think, a head, and they do real well with that in some parts of the state.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. What else can we do to make farmers more profitable? I know that gas is up. I know that it costs more for machinery. I know it costs more probably for fertilizers. I know it probably costs more for water, to water your crops, things like that. What are some things that you think can help make farmers more profitable in the state of Alabama?
I think there's a lot of little things. Farmers need to be able to sell their product locally. You as a consumer, one of the biggest things you could do to help farmers is buy from them. I want everybody that I see would love to come shop at my grocery store because we buy local produce from farmers when it's available. Everybody can't, shop at a local independent store. A lot of the chain grocery stores serve a purpose, but they don't buy local stuff. They have a planogram they have to follow from corporate, and that's just the way they operate, and that's fine. So if you could shop from your local farmers market, your local freezer beef guy, and find out who's selling those things and go buy directly from them, man, it'll make their day. Now, there's a program in Alabama called Sweet Grown Alabama that is very popular. However, there's a lot of people still don't know about it. And farmers and agribusiness folks join that program, and there's a website database. And if you want to buy fresh cantaloupes this summer, you can put in there to search cantaloupes, and it'll tell you in your area who's selling cantaloupes. And you can go right to the farm sometimes and buy those things. And we need more producers, and there's a lot of producers got on that because we've seen since COVID, folks more appreciative of having local sourced food because you couldn't get beef, couldn't get some things during that time. So a lot of those beef guys are on there. And I know some guys I got some good friends in the Heflin area. They used to send a lot of their cattle out west to fatten up and get ready for processing. They sell all theirs on the farm now, and they have an outstanding business where they ship it all over the country to people buying their local beef, and they've done real well with that. And we need more consumers to do that and understand how important that is to get fresh beef like that, and produce as well. Yeah.
Is there, let me ask you something. Since we've had some Democratic administrations over the last 10 to 12 years, is there more regulations in place on farmers that is making it harder to make a profit, or no? Or have you seen that?
Well, there's entirely too many regulations. I guess we need regulations. I guess I tell people a lot, I've never seen a regulation imposed upon me on my farm or business that didn't cost me money. That's the way it is. And some nimrod somewhere made a mistake. That's why you have to have the regulations in some cases. But there was a silly rule. It was short for WOTUS. A lot of people heard about it. Waters of the U.S. And we fought that it started during the Obama administration. And ADEM could come out to your property and look at a ditch holding water and classify that as a navigable waterway, and you couldn't touch it because it was protected like a creek or a stream. And there was people testifying before Congress all the time across this country about their ditches with water in them, and ADEM was giving them a hard time about, you got to stay away from that because. So it was Waters of the U.S. as WOTUS, and we fought that through the American Farm Bureau and our own state organizations. And then when the Republicans come into power, they scaled that back, and the Democrats came back. They kind of launched it up again. So we finally got that fixed, we hope now, where that ain't an issue anymore. But what the problem is with that situation is some of these ADEM and EPA and those folks, I said ADEM a while ago. It was actually EPA, not ADEM, not Alabama. It's EPA that created that rule. ADEM is pretty good to work with in Alabama. They're pretty common sense folks, do a good job. But these federal organizations like EPA have been given too much authority to write rules that wasn't the intent of the law that Congress passed. People forget that Congress passes laws, and I mean, you're an attorney. I'm sure you know a lot more about laws than I do. Congress passes the laws, and then judges interpret them, and regular people shouldn't have that power to do that. And that's what was happening in some of these organizations. They just said, hey, I don't like the fact that these guys are farming. Let's make this rule to where they can't use this lowland because it's wet. And things like that happen because they don't care where our food comes from, I guess. I don't know why. I don't know what their thinking is. Some people just have weird ideas. Man, there's some weird folks in this world.
There are. All right, folks, we're talking with Corey Hill. He's running for the Secretary of Agriculture Industries in the state of Alabama. Good conversation. We'll be back after news and weather. We'll be back.
You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram. If you need confidential legal help off air, reach out to Joe at joeingramlaw.com. Stay tuned for more. Joe will be right back after this break for news and weather. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. Joe is a 20-year veteran of the Alabama courts specializing in criminal defense and family law. If you need a private legal consultation, email Joe at joeingramlaw.com. And now, welcome back to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram.
All right, we're back for the final segment of Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram. You can always call me 825-5297, or you can go to Joe Ingram Law for all your legal needs. We're continuing our conversation with Corey Hill, who is running for the Agricultural Commissioner in the state of Alabama on the Republican side of the ticket. And we were talking during the break, and I was asking Corey some questions, and I want to clarify how important this position is to everybody that's going to vote in primaries. Corey, so as I understand it, Alabama is number 2 in the country as far as producing catfish.
That's correct, behind Mississippi.
That's fascinating to me. But unfortunately, we're not getting the rewards of our fruits of our labor in the state for the farmers that are doing that.
That's true. I don't know the exact answer to that, but we've got to start buying more U.S. and Alabama catfish in this country, in restaurants particularly.
Yeah. I want you to talk about some of the numbers and the data we talked about during the break about the Agricultural Commission and how big farming is in the state of Alabama that most people probably still do not realize today in 2026.
Probably not. All right, it's a $77.3 billion industry. 1 in 3 jobs is ag-related. It produces per capita $15,000 in revenue to the economy. So let me put it in this perspective. If you removed agriculture from Alabama, completely removed it, there was no agriculture, to have the same kind of economic cash flow in our state, every adult would have to write a $15,000 check to the state of Alabama to generate that kind of revenue. That's how much it is to each person. Now, besides being number 2 in catfish, we're number 2 in poultry production behind Georgia, and we feel like as an industry we'll be number 1 before long because the bigger Atlanta grows, it's going to keep on continuing to grow outwards and suppress that agriculture industry in Georgia. So at some point, we feel like we'll be number 1 ahead of Georgia. Within 100 miles of Dothan, Alabama, over half of the peanuts in the world are grown. You can't say Alabama grown because you got Florida and Georgia involved in that, but it's all based, Dothan is the peanut capital of the world. There's a lot of good agriculture in Alabama, and it's very important that we know where our food comes from. I think everybody today understands that where it comes from is important, but if we don't educate our children, there'll be a time whenever they don't care where their food comes from. We have a program in Marshall County where we go out to schools. The young farmers do that, and they take animals, like a petting fair, maybe once a year to certain schools and let second graders come and pet them. And it never fails that when they see the goats, they always think they're deer. Your kids go, oh, there's Bambi, those kind of things, all the time. They just don't understand. We used to all be raised on a farm or near one, or our grandparents had one, but kids now, they're so far removed from that, they don't understand that, pecans don't grow in the ground. They grow on trees, and potatoes where they come from, and eggs don't come from the store. And that's important that we educate folks.
Let me ask you something that just came to me because I hear this a lot. Do you think, I know the people that do it love it, and they probably don't really do it for the money. It's because it's how they grew up and they love what they do. And if you do what you love and you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Exactly. That's how I feel about it. Exactly. Do you think we're getting to a point in our world where people are going to start walking away and saying, this just isn't going to be good for the next generation. Go do something else. Do you see, what I'm talking about here?
I think we're seeing that now with kids of farmers coming up. They're going, we taught a generation, you've got to go to college and get smarter and go get a job. And now we're looking, hey, maybe you need to get a trade and do something you can make more money. I think if you don't have your farm paid for, if you have to buy equipment, because it's just the last 5 years, the appreciation level of the cost is substantial. It's not just an inflation rate cost of tractors. It's like way more than that, 300% in some cases, the cost of a tractor now. So I think you're going to see farm families have their land, and that's really all they've got. They don't have a lot of money typically. They have their retirements, their land. So if they know the kids aren't coming back, they're going to sell that land. Well, back in the day, at one time, when a farmer neighbor had land for sale, he would go call his other farmer neighbor and say, hey, I'm going to fix to sell my land. Do you want to buy this to increase your production? Well, heck yeah, I want to buy it. Here's the price, $2,000 or $3,000 maybe an acre. Well, now the price is market driven. You can't buy an acre of land anymore for, you hear some cases in the state, in Limestone County, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 an acre. Well, you can't buy that and farm it. So that's what you're going to see is people getting out of the business at that point, unless the kids really want to farm. In some cases, they're doing that. In some cases, they're not. There's a program in Florida that has, in other states I'm sure have it, I'm just familiar with theirs. I visited a farm down there in South Florida a couple of years ago, and I guess it's called conservation easement. I don't know the official name of it. That sounds kind of right, but the government has money in place, and if you have an easy example, if you have 10,000 acres that you farm and you want to keep on farming, but you need money, you can sell the government you can sell them all of it, but you can sell them the rights to 5,000 of your acres, and they'll pay you market price for it, and you put that money in the bank, you continue to farm it. You own the land, but it can never be developed. It always has to be utilized for what it is that day, which is typically row crop or agriculture. Mm-hmm. So it can be sold, but the next guy's got to continue to farm on it. So that's allowing our land to stay farmland. When you see in South Alabama now, there's a big controversy about solar farms. And I don't know why solar farms can't be put on the Walmart parking lot. Just like to me, that makes perfect sense. There may be a reason we can't do that. But we can't continue to take our farmland and use it for non-farming reasons. However, people live out in the country because they don't want to be told what to do with their land or at all. Yeah. So it's hard to say to somebody, you can't sell your land for development. You've got to do this or do that. So we got to find some incentive to give those people a reason to keep their land in agriculture, whether selling it to a farmer, government programs, or whatever. I think that's a very important position we're in this state, in this country right now, to try to get to that point where we can keep our land in production.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you something. We were talking during the break about chicken farming in the state of Alabama. We were talking about hormone-free chicken, things like that. Expand upon that just for a minute.
All right, a big misconception, and one of the poultry companies done a great job with this years ago, advertising our chickens are hormone-free. There's not been any of those, they've been outlawed since the 70s in Alabama, so there's not any chicken that has growth hormones in them. That's just a good marketing ploy by a particular company that done well, and the consumer was, I wouldn't say confused, but the consumer was convinced that if it didn't say it on the package, then it must have hormones in it. and that's not the case. There's no growth hormones in poultry in Alabama or anywhere in the country actually.
Yeah, you touched on people wanting to put solar panel farms in South Alabama, and I've heard this issue come up a lot in some interviews we've done already this year about data centers. Have you heard about those?
Heard a little bit about that.
And you've been on the trail all over Alabama, I hope, over the last few months. Have you heard people talk about that, the concern about that they're trying to put data centers on their land? And what I'm hearing is it takes up a lot of land. It doesn't really produce any revenue, really. It takes a lot of power, takes a lot of water. Have you heard about that from people that you go out and talk to in the state of Alabama?
I understand what you said is the case in those data centers, and I have not encountered a single person that wants a data center or thinks we need them. And I guess we need them. I don't even know what a data center does. I guess stores data, and we need to do more of that. Of course, I do think this ain't possible, but if we all got rid of our data and our cell phones and talk more, we'd probably be a better society. But we gotta have
That's
that.
not going to happen.
That's
Corey.
not going to happen.
That's not going to happen.
Got to have our data. But I think from what I heard, what you said, they don't produce any jobs, and jobs is what keeps the economy going because people get paid and they go spend their money. So there's got to be a place for data centers, but we just can't. I don't think, and I'm not going to be a dictator and tell anybody what they can and can't do with their land, whatever the law allows, what they can do with it. But I don't think we need to be taking up farmland for data centers or solar farms.
Yeah. That's going to be a big debate, I think, coming for the next 10 or 15 years, nationally, state, everywhere. Yeah. So let me ask you something. When did you announce that you were going to run for this position?
October of 2023.
Okay.
I think I went my first visit to a county farmers group in DeKalb County and Jackson County in October of 23.
Okay. And we're getting close to the primary. You counting the days down?
Well, yes. I don't have a counter on my phone looking at it every day, but I think we was 2 months out yesterday or 2 days ago. I don't even know what day it is. One day this week we were 2 months out, so we're getting closer than we were, and we're excited about it. And it's pretty grueling.
Yeah,
there's a lot of places to be.
Are you? I ask everybody that comes in that's running for a statewide office, how many miles do you think you've traveled in your quest for your position?
I haven't looked yet because I don't want to know yet. It's going to be like a big unveiling, like a gender reveal party when I'm done. I have an 09 Tahoe that I've got 291,000 miles on. Man, I love that thing. I hope it ain't going to last forever, but I wished it would. So I wrote down my mileage when I started, and I use it primarily for campaign. So when I don't use it for campaign, which is rare, I write down that mileage, and I'm subtracting that off at the end. So I know how many miles. I can look back and see how many miles I've drove for non-campaign stuff. But I bet you it's in the 50 or 60,000 mile range, or maybe more than that, because my wife and I went down last week. We went to Dothan, Enterprise, over to Mobile, Bayou to Battery, and home. A couple of weeks ago, it was just the craziest schedule. I had to go to Orange Beach, Atmore, Tuscaloosa, back to Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, and then to Arley that Saturday. So it's just, you got to go when they're having events, and you can't pick and choose. You got to be there.
Yeah. You've got the opportunity to meet lots and lots of people from the state of Alabama, right?
I have.
What's your experience meeting all the people? To me, it doesn't matter whether you meet people in Huntsville, Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile. There's something unique about Alabama people, and whether you're suburban, rural, country, whatever, we're all kind of the same.
I think you're right. There's still, in this day and time, no matter what the media says, we're still a very Christian, faith-based Alabama, and people in Alabama, they're all related to everybody. They know everybody. In every community I go to, they're kin to each other. Strong family ties are important, and faith is important to most people I've encountered. I really have. I mean, people talk about other statewide candidates, and we all know each other, and we see each other at every event we go to and become friends, to some degree. And we talk about some of them are tired, and we are all tired, but I've enjoyed every minute of this. I'm a people person. I think that's why we've been somewhat successful in our grocery store and retail, because we just like to be around people. And some people get energy from different ways, I guess. Mine's just being around people. I just kind of thrive on that. So I've enjoyed meeting people. I can talk to anybody, walk up to them and just start a conversation. So I'm kind of going to be a little bit disappointed when it's over. But I tell you, on May the 20th, I'm not answering my phone. I'm going to rest and sleep and catch up that day. I can tell you that.
You've had some really good support from business groups in the state of Alabama. Tell the folks on Talk Radio the kind of support that you've got backing you.
So I'm very fortunate to have the support of some of the hardest working people in Alabama, and that's the Alabama farmers and Alabama cattlemen. I got the endorsement and support of the Alabama Farmers Federation. I've got the support of the Alabama Cattlemen's Beef Pack. The Alabama Grocers Associations are supporting me. And, people talk about, everybody understands, every candidate understands the importance of the Farmers Federation. But the trick to that is you earn that endorsement, because it's not given by corporate boardroom guys in Montgomery or Birmingham. You have to go to every single county in Alabama and visit with those guys. And if you just call them, that ain't good enough. You got to visit with them. And you visit with their board, their local board, and then each board member, each county in Alabama has one vote. Jefferson has the same amount of votes as Choctaw County. So once you visit with all those counties, they convene in Montgomery, and everybody's there together, and they discuss it and talk about it. There's actually 87 votes to get that endorsement. There's 67 counties plus 20 state board members, and you have to get it that way. It's earned, and so that was very valuable, and I was very proud to get that.
That's good. We're talking with Corey Hill. He is running for the Agricultural Commissioner of the state of Alabama. This is a statewide office. Corey, you mentioned at the top of the interview about how big this department is, the number of employees. Is this a position that you could do? You live up near Marshall County.
That's right.
Is this something that you would have to commute back and forth to Montgomery, or is this something that you can do remotely? How would that work for you?
Well, I don't think I'd necessarily do it from the house, but there is a law, if you're a constitutional officer in Alabama, you have to have a residence in Montgomery County. So I would naturally get an apartment or something down there. Some folks buy houses there, then sell them. I don't know exactly my plan yet. But there'll be days in the office. There's great deputy commissioners that run that office and do a great job. I'm a people person, as I said. I'm not an office guy at all. That's one reason I enjoy farming so much. I'm outside. But my plan would be to be out amongst the people. So I may be in the office 1 or 2 days a week or parts of days, and but I expect I'll leave from home a lot and go around the state. I mean, you can be anywhere in the state in less than 5 hours, so you have to leave early. But my plan is to be out amongst the people and the farmers and the businesses, learning what they need and doing that. So I will not be living in Montgomery full time. I'll be staying there a good bit. And I won't be in the office every day in Montgomery. I'm going to be out working with the farmers.
Yeah.
Trying to make them better.
That's great. Is this a position that is term limited? How many times you can serve?
Yeah, this is a two 4-year terms.
2 4-year terms. Okay. Let me ask you a couple other questions before we get to wrap up with you. So tell me a little bit about what you like to do for fun, personally.
Well, work.
You don't have time for much else.
Well, I was speaking, it was a Vestavia, I think, Republican group a while back on a Saturday morning, Mid-Alabama Republican. I said, somebody that came up, and I said, I may offend some of y'all in this room. I don't fish or hunt. I can't be still. I ain't got the patience to sit in a tree stand. I tried it. We fished and hunted when I was a kid. We got a pond. We fish now some just for funsies. But as far as hunting, I used to play golf a lot. That got boring to me. I can't do that 4 or 5 hours. I'd rather be doing something. And our farms got bigger, so there's always something to do. And to me, out on the farm, on the four-wheeler or the side-by-side, checking cows or working on a fence, that's fun to me. I mean, I'd rather do that than play golf. I do like to travel. I think if I had to pick something I had to do, I like to eat. So I would be a great food critic. I would love to have a job. I'm not a good writer, but I would love to have a job where I could go, sample food at restaurants. I think that'd be cool.
What's your favorite meal? What's your favorite type of food that you like?
I like everything, but I like anything with chicken in it. My wife makes an outstanding chicken casserole that I could eat it probably once a week, not get tired of it. It's kind of weird. I don't like cake. I don't like dry desserts. I like puddings and I like wet desserts, whatever how that means. But like we go to a wedding, my wife and I both, we'll get a little piece of wedding cake and eat a little bit of the icing. You buy it. I'm just not a cake guy. I don't eat a lot of sweets, but I eat a lot of salty snacks. I'm a salty snack guy.
You've talked to a lot of people in your travels running for statewide office. What is if you can recall, has anybody walked up to you and asked you a question, you were like, what's the craziest question you've gotten about this position that you can remember, if you can recall?
I got asked one time how hard it was going to be for me to get all the potholes fixed in these country back roads. And the answer's pretty hard because I have no control over that. None at all.
And we were talking during the break, and you said that somebody asked you, or they made a comment that they didn't really vote for the office because they didn't think it applied to them.
Yeah, I heard that. And that's why what I said today with you is kind of what I say now in some of my speeches when I talk to these groups, because I want them to understand how important this role is. But a lady actually told me, said, I've never voted for that. I didn't think it pertained to me. But actually, if you eat in Alabama, if you eat groceries,
or you buy gas,
or you buy anything that's weighed, it pertains to you. And people just need to understand that. And if you're going to vote, it's so far down the ballot. It's probably on the backside in some cases. And some people may not even vote for it. I mean, I'm sure some people don't vote just because they don't flip over or don't go that far down. They're there to vote for a particular office or race. But I wish people would get informed and educated about every office and vote for the best candidate. And I understand sometimes you got to leave one blank. You just don't know. But this is a big deal. This is a big role. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we're going to fix a bunch of stuff that's broke. The ag department's in great shape. We've had great ag commissioners. They've done a great job. Our current ag commissioner could probably serve 2 or 3 more terms had he not been term limited. He's very popular and done a good job for agriculture and for agribusiness. It's just the way the law's set up. So we're just going to take the good things there and make them better. And we're going to work every day for farmers to keep our food safe and try to find a way to make them more profitable.
Yeah, that's good. You have some opposition in this race, correct?
There's 3 Republicans in the race.
How have you seen any data? How you doing?
Yes, we have not released a lot of data, but we're in good shape. There's 2 of us jockeying for first place. There's so many undecided in every state race, though. There's 60% probably in every state race, including ours, that are undecided.
I have seen. I keep hearing somewhere between 60 and 70% undecided in all the state races, and I've talked to a lot of people, which surprises me. So, do you think you probably may be looking at a runoff?
I think there'll be a runoff. I wish there wouldn't be. I wish I could win this thing without a runoff, but I think ultimately I think there'll be a runoff. There's not my race. There's 9, I think, lieutenant governor candidates. I mean, It's hard to believe anybody's going to win that. And U.S. Senate, same way. It's just so many there, and there's some good candidates. I'm sure you keep up with it. And across the board, Alabama's in a good position this time. So we ain't always in this way where we got good candidates to choose from. Now, there's some bad ones, I'm sure, mixed in there that people could argue that are. But generally speaking, there's some good candidates in every field, in every race in Alabama right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an important race this year because we got the big 4 all up there: governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, and yours as well. Yep. The big 5 races are all up for election this time. We only got about a minute or 2 left. How can people reach out to you if they want to support you?
Okay, CoreyHill4Alabama.com. That's our website. We have a Facebook page. My cell number is published everywhere. I don't care who has it. Call me anytime. I'm very easily accessible. I've been the mayor of Douglas since 2012, and we have a grocery store and a farm there. I'm the most accessible guy around. Call me. Call me, Alabama. Call me and vote for me.
Call me, Alabama. Corey, I really appreciate you coming in today and taking the time to talk to us. A lot of people don't know about this position, and that's not a knock on you or the position. I'm just saying the voters at large are not probably informed. And so that's why I really wanted you to come in and talk today, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, folks, you got an opportunity to hear from Corey Hill today. He's running on the Republican side of the primary for agricultural commissioner in the state of Alabama. He has some opposition. There are 3 people running for the position. I ask you to go out and educate yourself. Corey, let me ask you real fast. Your money-wise and your coffers, are you good right now?
We're good.
And you're going to dump it all before the primary?
All TV, yep.
Everybody's dumping it probably here in the next 4 weeks.
Start about 3 weeks out. You'll get tired of TV commercials.
Yeah, I know. That's what I hate. That's why I'm not going to listen to the TV or the radio.
Yeah.
Folks, this was a good interview. Next week, the Attorney General of the state of Alabama, Steve Marshall, is going to be here. You do not want to miss that interview. You don't get an opportunity to hear Steve Marshall for an hour. Final word for my runners for the week. Everybody has a turn back moment where you can go forward or you can give up. But the thing that you have to keep in mind before you give up is that if you give up, it will never, ever, ever happen. So the only way is to keep going forward. Never give up. See you next week. Gotta go. Bye.
Don't forget to follow Joe's Legal Lowdown podcast on iHeart. If you need a private legal consultation, reach out to Joe on his website, joeingramlaw.com. Tune in again next Saturday for the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by any other lawyer.